Good evening, viewers, and welcome to the Sunday special episode of Grooming Daughters. Today we have with us Mrs. Ritika Karwat. Mrs. Ritika Karwat relocated to Mumbai from Belgium after marriage. She did a Global Family Managed Business program from SP Jain School of Global Management and used the learnings by continuing in her family business as an entrepreneur and creating a community of entrepreneurs and reached out to like-minded people. She is now a solitaire diamond expert and a consultant. She also conducts workshops to empower esteemed group of consumers. Ritika is the founder of Ritika Karwa Diamond Solutions. Here she services and customizes diamond jewelry, the solitaire as well as tailor makes the jewel from source to finger. She is also the founder of her first ever passion project called House of Entrepreneurs. Here they privately network among 300 individuals who are leaders in their business fields and share resources as well as collaborate with each other. We also have with us today Professor Hiten Muchala. He's a very passionate teacher and teaches strategy at Global School of Family Managed Business under GFMB program. He's also an entrepreneur from last 28 years. Welcome Hiten sir and welcome Ritika. Enjoyed listening viewers. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Sabina. Welcome all the viewers again to the Sunday special. And I think we have this young lady today, and her business is something which is, I think, close to, each and every woman's heart all across the world, right? Irrespective of any religion, any caste, any community, I think all women love diamonds. And that's what she's into. And the interesting and the uniqueness about Ritika is that she was educated out of India. So she did her schooling, she did her undergrad, she did her graduation, everything outside India. And now she's settled, married and settled in India. She has a family. So it's going to be a very, very interesting perspective from somebody who has spent her young age before marriage outside India and now in India. So welcome, Ritika. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
So I think most viewers will be interested to know what had been your brought up. You have been brought up in a foreign land and with the education and the culture around you, which is not Indian, right? So what has been your experience?
That's a very good question because I think when Indians move out of India, they're always more Indian than when they're in India. So I think it's always been a mission for my parents to make sure that we are more Indian and we, conserve our culture. So there's a very close-knit Indian community here in Antwerp, which is the heart of diamonds, and all are Gujarati. So I think we are very influential because, diamonds brings a lot of economic growth in Antwerp. So the locals tend to convert their language more than the Gujaratis learning the local language. I think that my parents had a good vision. They made sure I learned the local language just because, Belgians are very patriotic. So to be able to deal with them in their own language is giving you an edge over those who don't know the language. And eventually they knew that we're going to live our life over here. So to be able to communicate in their language, we can always be like a local in the country.
So how is it like being treated a young woman in a foreign land?
I think that women over here are very empowered because Europeans generally have a lifestyle where they move out very soon. For me, it was an accidental promotion. I never planned to do anything of my own. I had actually just planned to join my father. And after my graduation, I was going to do a post-graduation. I didn't do that because of this opportunity that lay ahead. So I chose to be an entrepreneur and all of it just happened. It wasn't very planned.
Okay. So you mentioned that you always wanted to join your father's business. Did you join your father's business? And if yes, how was it like? What were the experiences?
So the funny thing is I qualified for it, I didn't go ahead on, blood equity. It was the merit, that okay, you need to be good enough to come to office. So I did the course, the diamond grading course. I did a good 6 to 8 months experience at the office, and I was qualified for the work. I could join his business. He's into manufacturing and wholesaling, distributing polished goods, and a lot of it is local business. So that would be great because I would know the language, compared to all the seniors who were there at the office who didn't know the language, or only a few of them knew the language. I could probably be the young one in the company knowing the language. That was definitely a benefit, but I wasn't too keen on pursuing it after realizing that joining my dad's business had a level of saturation. After a particular point, they would still go back and talk to my father and want answers from him rather than taking me seriously.
So I think it's an interesting point that, this is a business which is being outside India. And still you are saying that they would still prefer to talk to your father. Any specific incidences or any challenges that you faced as a woman joining your
many.
father's business in a foreign land?
Many.
Yeah.
So firstly, I don't know if you know, but the diamond business, I mean, in India especially, the women are a minority. So it's a luxury to see women in maybe BKC or Bharat Diamond Bourse. There are barely any women there except maybe a receptionist. Okay. And over here, of course, we have more women because, a lot of Europeans also who are living here, the local Belgians also work in the same industry. But I think that, one of the very, very strong incidences were that, when my father's, like business partners would come and tell me, what's the need for you to do all of this? Your dad is already doing everything. The company is already doing well on its own. Why don't you do something which is of your own? And I was thinking that since such a big strong foundation is already laid, and obviously an insider or a family member would always help. My brother was much younger to me, so if he had to join the business, it would be much later. And one of the very funny incidences were when I had gone to do a deal with a new client. But what happens in the diamond business is that they always take out references before they actually go ahead with the deal. And it's called mazal tov. It's the word we use, which is Jewish, actually Hebrew, which means deal. We'll go ahead with this deal. So I went ahead. I found this new client. It was a great client to start off with. The client's profile is very different than the profiles we currently had, and I was very happy about it. And I would go and talk to them, and I would do the mazal tov. Mazal tov means that both the parties have agreed and you are moving on and the deal has been sealed. The funny thing is, after the mazal tov with me, a call went to my father for the details. I told my dad, these details have been discussed. We have gone through all of this. Why is the second call going through to you? So a check was being done with my father that whatever your daughter has said, is it actually validated? So the entire thing went against my father, and eventually the mazal tov really happened with him. I was only under the illusion that I was the one doing the deal. So yeah, I mean, a lot of experiences are important to make you realize that there are some things that happen socially and you can't help it. I took it in my stride. I learned whatever I could, from being part of the family business, and yet thinking innovatively. And as everyone, encouraged me to do something of my own, I eventually found an opportunity and I leveraged it.
So would you believe that had it been your brother for the mazal tov, they would not have cross-checked with your father?
Well, I don't have to believe because he's in the business now and he's still running it, right? So that's already, validated, and that's already acknowledged. So he is a part of my dad's business. He does the rough side of it. So he doesn't do much of the polishing, but rough is more difficult, and he does all of that. And there's no involvement of dad at all. I mean, all decisions are made by him, from the smallest ones to the, highest investment decision making. So it's all taken care of by him.
All right. So did you continue with your father's business, or you found something by yourself?
No, I did. I fortunately found something for myself. I did. I found something for myself. I mean, it was a bit coincidental. They were actually opening an area in the tourism zone in Brussels, which is an hour and a half from Antwerp. And that had to be a like a zone, which is a secured zone for all business travelers. And it's giving them an opportunity to not have to go from Brussels to Antwerp, but to bring Antwerp to Brussels.
Wow.
And all the delicacies of Antwerp had to represent themselves over there. And when I heard this was going on, because I knew the language again, that was my big forte, I figured out that they were having a chocolatier. So Pierre Marcolini was going to be there, one of the top chocolatiers in Belgium. There were going to be the coffee shop that serve all the delicacies of Belgium, like the beer, the cheese, the waffles, but they didn't have anything else which was luxury. So I said, this is a great opportunity to actually have clientele that are well known, because the business travelers, they're actually registered with the secured zone. So whoever passes by is not a stranger. So that makes it very secure for payments, number one. And number two, they definitely have no time to come to Antwerp to source something interesting for their loved ones for a good occasion. So I put the two together and decided that, if I put up something in that secured zone and represent diamonds from Antwerp in Brussels, I think that would be a great opportunity for me to interact with the whole community of business travelers.
Okay. And how was your father's reaction when you got him to this idea?
I think he was very happy, and he was very happy for me, because there were some things at work that he couldn't change. A lot of mentalities that existed. I mean, even if he was very accepting towards a lot of things and he was very empowering towards me, some situations would never be in my favor. So he was very happy if I would get something which is completely under my control, where I 360 degrees get to learn. And, starting from making the boutique, to the management, to the Wi-Fi connection, to the payment portals, to who I have to employ for the sales shift, to understanding the rules and regulations, because Belgium is a very different country in terms of, how you have employees. So you have a social security for each employee. So technically, you're paying a lot more than you would normally pay in other countries, because a lot of it is insurance for the employee. So to understand all of that and to realize that employing people, how much more is that going to be an overhead, and how do we actually make the best of the time that they have? So it was a lot of exposure. It really, I think, made my spine to be an entrepreneur, because a lot of things which were completely unexpected came my way. So for example, there's something called, you have to have a compulsory, contract for a fire insurance. Now the fire installation was not in the boutique, but it was out of the boutique. And that's not allowed in Belgium. It's against the Belgian law to have a fire installation outside, even though it's right next to my boutique. So we had to redo the boutique in that particular area, get the guys to come back to, change the look of the boutique, install the fire, detector in there. So there were a lot of things that you don't know till you actually do them. I think it was a brilliant playground for me to actually understand so much more about business in a European country.
So I think what you used, the word was that there was some kind of a resistance to you being a woman in your father's business, right? And it's quite hard to believe, because back in India, that's how the system is, and that's what we are trying to do here. We are trying to bring an awakening here, but it's also something which is happening in other parts of the world, and this is quite surprising, especially in a developed country. Coming back to your idea of starting a business, the new venture, how did your experience in your father's business help you to set this up?
Oh yeah, that was actually, those were the building blocks of the idea. So to be able to actually understand and be able to analyze diamonds, to be able to know what diamonds would be ideal for consumers for their daily purchases versus their luxury purchases. So what we had in our booth had to be a research and amalgamation of whatever I have, whatever deals I've done before in my at my dad's manufacturing office, to be able to understand what goods are to be catered to the end consumer. So I think the background really helped me, because when you look at the diamond pipeline, manufacturing is the first channel, and I'm actually at the retail end now, which is the last channel. So to be able to cover the entire pipeline, the psychologies are so different. So for example, retailers would buy a particular quality, to be able to, leverage their brand value. But for me, it was very important that I provide the manufacturing benefit to my retail setup, so that the business travelers don't have to think twice or have to go and double check on whether they're getting value for money, whether they're getting the range that they require, and whether they're getting something which is completely authentic. Together, I had to really use that bag of 50 pieces. So you're only insured for a particular amount and you can't go beyond that. So I had to make sure that I calculate backwards. With that amount, what kind of inventory can I have? And with that inventory, what do I want to display that's going to be relevant to my new consumer?
So coming to an interesting question, now that you are married, happily married, and have a family in India, what brought you to India from Belgium, and how did you meet your life partner, and how did these things turn out to be?
Again, an accidental promotion. So I obviously expected this venture to be a long-term thing. The whole investment was done in that way. But I was very okay with moving on if there was something more interesting happening in my life. And that's when I met my husband. So he was definitely more interesting than the business I'd set up. And then I left it behind. I had to wind up. I met him at the gym coincidentally when I was in Mumbai on a vacation. So that's how it happened. And we decided to get married, and I decided to move to Mumbai permanently. And the entrepreneurial bug never left me. So I did, take a break for a year. The first year, I traveled with him because he himself runs his own family business.
So I think let me ask you, Ritika, one more question. Is that when you found a partner in India, you already had a thriving business back in Belgium, which you set up by yourself. What was your father's reaction that time? Was it like that? See, I always used to tell you, why did you set this up? There's always this uncertainty in a woman's life. Anything like that?
No, he was like the father from DDLJ. They're always very happy when their daughters find their loved ones, So it was very much like that, Ja Simran, ji le apni zindagi. If you feel like going to India is the right thing to do and to get married to the person you have fallen in love with, he was okay with it. He was very happy for me, and he said that anyways, it has nothing to do with his business. So he offered my mother to take it over, but I don't think my mom was very keen for taking it over either. And at the same time, see, if there's nobody handling that business the way I was, the salaries, all of that has to be taken into consideration if you're really going to run it ahead. So we decided to wind it up. And when I moved to India, I even thought that I'm not going to do the business anymore because I'm in a different country. It's so different the way it operates. Setting up a business in India is so different as well. Interactions are so different. Yeah.
Okay. So how has been your husband's support in helping you to set up this business in India?
So I think my husband also is like a brand ambassador for the GFMB course. He was the one who, pushed me and told me that you have to do this course. It's a life-changing course. For someone who is not in India, they must do it because it really explains to you everything about the business before you actually set it up. And that clarity is going to help you to, jumpstart things much faster. So he was actually the driving force for me to do my course at GFMB. He did his course as well earlier. That's how he knows how beneficial it was for him. So my first year I traveled with him because he's in the import of fresh fruit. So he has to keep traveling to procure the fruit. And by the second year, I was back to doing my own business and finding ways of innovating because unlike what I was doing in Belgium, which was very unique, whatever I was going to do in Bombay was going to be part of the very homogeneous industry and a homogeneous way of doing things. So I was definitely not in for a retail because that's just one more retail shop, in that lane of another 10 retail brands that are already exhibited. So I wasn't very keen for that. And I think GFMB really helped me to channelize my energy and to understand my business idea and to create something which is unique among such a homogeneous industry.
Interesting. So now that you have done business in Belgium and in India, how do you see, what differences do you see, especially as a woman entrepreneur?
So I think that when I thought the struggle in Belgium was a struggle, that wasn't really a struggle till I got to India. The struggle word is redefined completely. I think that a lot of people in India don't realize the powerful women that exist. Yes, Chanda Kochar, Indira Nui, all of them are there. But how did they get there? Only they know. So even if it means stepping into, the shoes of very entrepreneurial women and trying to do something of your own, the first struggle you get is from the basic management of your house, all the way to my, probably CA. Every point you'll have a level of resistance. You'll have to learn to sensitize yourself towards dealing with men at all levels. So for example, if I had to get some work done by my cook was more like my mother-in-law than my mother-in-law herself. So for getting work done by him, I have to bribe him, I have to be very nice to him, I have to be in his good books. I cannot do things which he doesn't like, which means entering the kitchen when he's there. He's supposed to dominate the space. I'm not supposed to be in that space at all. I'm not supposed to change or criticize any of the menus. So it took a very long time for me to actually, you know, uh, have a good rapport. And then for there to be a turning point for the staff at home to want to listen to me. And we have quite a staff because we're like, my mother-in-law, father-in-law, me, my husband, my sister-in-law, and now my son. And then we have 3 staff, 3 drivers, and a cook. So it's a lot of chaos and potential for chaos. To put that all together and to kind of, meet the expectations of a daughter-in-law who can manage the house, the first thing is to be able to manage the staff. Because managing the house is only about managing the staff. And to manage the staff, my first resistance was the language. So Marathi was a very, very big resistance for me. Until and unless I spoke to them in Marathi, they would not take me seriously. So I learned it. I had to learn the language. And in the beginning, I was laugh at me because I would say anything. I would be like, "Ata tumi ikde bag, mala nahi mahit mala kai karaycha hai." And the way I would talk, they would, she's really funny. They wouldn't take
You
me seriously
mentioned
at
you
all.
mentioned you
They'll
had
say,
also
"Bhagi,
a
just talk
challenge
in
with
Hindi, it's
CA.
okay." I said,
You also mentioned that you had a challenge with your CA. Would you like to illustrate? What was it?
so what I meant to say was that I had a lot of business administration issues because I was actually sharing my admin work with my husband's office. So say all the payments would go through his office. I would share the same CA that he had, etc., etc. So to get that work done, my husband would tell me, "Just tell me, I'll tell them what to do. Just tell me, I'll tell them what to do." And I'm like, when will I tell them what to do? I mean, it's always going to be me delegating it to you and you telling them what to do. He's like, "Yeah, but they're very used to the way I talk." So I understood that. And now we figured a midway where, only if there are things which are, needing streamlining, like a lot of paperwork, a lot of processes which require streamlining. Because what happens in the business right now as well, which I conduct in Mumbai, is very prompt. So say I got an order this morning for something which is to be next week. I supply exactly in 4 days, which means my paperwork has to be within the same day and the payments have to be cleared the next day. And unlike many bespoke jewelers, I'm the only person who gives that minimum time in admin and maximum time in service. So because of that, again, I had to set processes with my people who were doing all my paperwork or who were taking care of filing my payments to have their dates in place. So my purchase and sales have to be in place. I can't have a wrong purchase date and a wrong sales date. So just that continuous supervision to let them know what the touch points are. And now it's very easy because now it's all been streamlined. So they know what they need to do. and I just have to, communicate one thing and the rest is taken care of.
All right. So working one is, setting up your own business in India, adjusting and adopting yourself to the business culture of India. That's one thing. And then having a small child, right? How have you been managing and juggling between all these things?
So I think if you thought that my world hasn't gone upside down yet, that happened exactly when I had my child, So that was, another layer to the complexities. At the same time, a layer of joy as well. I think what the child can do, maybe a whole, community or village can't give you that kind of happiness, that kind of satisfaction, that kind of, you know, passion to life, the way they have it. It's a lot to learn from them. So I think the first thing I would say is that one should have children to learn from their children, not to teach them, because they have a lot to teach us. I also think that having a child has made me from, let's say, a manager to a CEO in my house, because my level of efficiency had to increase at all spheres. So for a very simple thing, if I would plan my lunch, Indian food is such that you have to actually soak it. There's a time in between. You've got to crush it, you've got to make it. There's a whole procedure to it. It's not just bread and butter. So it's not that easy. So unlike before, where I'd say, okay, you know what, I'm going to make this, and I would change the plan the next day in case it's not soaked, etc., etc. With a son in place who needs to be at school at a particular time, who has to be at a class at a particular time, who has to be taught a few things before the next class or revised because of homework that comes home, etc., etc. I think it was very important that my time would be very, very, very well managed. I learned to be a micro planner from a macro planner. I think that's a very big change that came to me. I used a lot of technology as well in that process. I have a lot of apps that help me for my time management, for me to segregate the day. In fact, I found out a new app which talked about how to plan your clothes. So you can have your entire wardrobe on your phone and you can decide what you're going to wear for what meeting, for what social, for what function, and you don't have to use your brain because a lot of time goes in all of this. So I had to actually segregate and see where my time is going, what is not being planned enough for me to be 100%, not only mentally, physically, but even the presentation wise, or even time wise. So to be able to streamline all of that, I tried to make the use of all the tools that I had around me.
Okay. And what do you think is a woman expected? In the sense, you have lived most of your young days in Belgium and now in India. How do you
Yeah.
see that difference in expectations from a woman?
I don't think there's any change. I think that women, are not, uh, are never saying no to anything, So they're always taking more on their plate. So,
Mhm.
they're, as daughters, they're doing things for their parents. As wives, they're doing things for their husbands. As daughter-in-laws, they're doing it for their in-laws. And it all comes so naturally because I think it's so much ingrained in our culture that women have to adapt. So I think it's less nature but more nurture that we go through all the time. So if a very strong example would be that when I went to India, and when uh, I would see that my mother-in-law is not getting what she wants, or my father-in-law is not very happy with what's happening at home. I would very naturally intervene. I would make sure that, okay, today's meal, don't worry, I'll manage it. I'll make it the way they want it, or I'll organize the day in a way that they are it's not spoiling their timetable, or that because of any issue at home, managing everyone's moods. And I think it comes very naturally that, okay, always be that shoulder, always be someone who they can people can fall back on. So I think that can be a positive thing, also a negative thing. I think there were times when I didn't know what I stood for, because I would say yes to everything. I would tell my mother-in-law, yes, I'll come in the night and I'll play cards with you, and I've been all day up with my son, and the previous night I've not slept because he's gotten up 7 times. And I wouldn't have the courage to go and tell her that, no, listen, I've had a very crazy night, I can't do this. I would still do it. So uh, I think at some point you have to draw your boundaries. I've learned that. I've learned that the hard way. That if you try to please everybody, you're going to just displease yourself. So that's there. And I also think that you have to forgive yourself, because you're only human at the end of the day. So I think there were times when I would try to do my best, whether it means in my son's school, whether it means that, making sure that grandparents day is very special. But sometimes things go wrong even if you try your best. I remember, it was grandparents day and the instructions were given, you have to send a photo of your child, and there was a mistake in the way they said child, and then grandparents was in the next sentence. So I sent a picture of my child. It was supposed to be a picture of the child with the grandparents. So when my in-laws went, they only saw the picture I sent of Saransh alone. And they were like, everybody has a picture with their grandparents. Why didn't you send one? And I said, oh God, like these little things, you end up missing sometimes. And that's part of the multitasking. So.
And does it lead to tough relationships, or strained relationships, high expectations?
I think high expectations always leads to more clarity. So I wouldn't say strain is a part of the more clarity. So when there are high expectations that are well communicated, first there's a lot of strain. But then because they're so well communicated, the opposite person who is expected from can also be a very good communicator. And in a nice way communicate their own boundaries, because only if they explain to the opposite person what their situation is, what their intention is, and how much they can do with the given time, the person who is expecting it cannot change or cannot understand if you refuse. So to be able to explain to them and to be able to make them understand that your intention is pure, but you may fall short on some situations because there's too much more that's going on, I think that's very fair. So the strain goes away, you become closer because you're able to communicate so clearly, and acceptance comes eventually.
Wonderful, Ritika. I think very well put. And that's precisely the whole idea. I think something which is coming up very strongly from what Ritika has said is that, are there very high expectations from being a woman? How much are we expecting from our daughter to please us? How much are we expecting from our wife to please us and the family? And how much are we expecting too much as a daughter-in-law to please us? And in this process, do we realize that what makes her happy? She's trying to make us happy. What is trying to make her happy? And I think it's more about that identity. It's more about understanding and learning and supporting our daughter-in-law, or our wife, to help her explore more. That's precisely the whole idea of Asian Institute of Family Managed Business. We are conducting these sessions because we want to bring out these very, very, very detailed, very unheard of, or rather, I would say, unfelt societal mindsets. And this is what we try to do. This is what we are trying to bring to the fore. More discussions to happen. If you believe in what we believe, if you would like to join in these discussions, please contact Ms. Sujata Roy. She can be reached at 98339-67687. Ms. Sujata Roy, 98339-67687. We will come back next Sunday, same time, with a different participant and with some different topic.